A warm welcome, folks, to the first ever episode of Moose on the Loose podcast in association with White Moose Media. Wow, it's been a long time coming, but it's finally here. Something I've always kind of wanted to do, and here it is happening. And for this very joyous occasion, I'm delighted to be joined by the lovely Mary McHugh, who is a fellow Islander. I can say I'm an Islander now.
Yes, you can. Yes.
But where on Achill are you from?
So I'm from a beautiful village called the Valley
Okay.
in Achill. Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah. Is that on the north side of the island?
Yes, it is actually. Yeah. So it's the quieter. I call it the quieter side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you know, we have a sauna on Dugurt Beach, and I'm not trying to overly promote the sauna here on this at all, but we have a sauna on Keel Beach and we have one on Dugurt Beach.
Yes.
And Keel is kind of the bustling metropolis of Achill.
Yes.
But Dugurt, there's a sense of
there's a tranquil. Yeah.
There's a tranquility, and I far prefer Dugurt Beach to Keel Beach. But listen, Mary, thank you for coming on the show today.
You're very welcome.
Can we maybe get a little bit, would you call yourself a counsellor, a psychologist, a psychotherapist, or all of the above?
Yeah, so my background is psychotherapy.
Right.
I've been doing it about 20 years.
Wow.
And then mindfulness would be another part. And I suppose something I'm using today is my mindfulness for myself in doing this today. I'm doing it over 20 years. I set up an online business back in 2011. So I suppose took psychotherapy to a different level. We'd be the first in Ireland actually to set up an online service for people, you know. So I suppose we set it up because we knew there were people who couldn't access face-to-face, whether that was anxiety, disability, and there was nothing for them. And sometimes they would be presenting in A&E departments to get help because they'd have gone to an extreme where actually we felt an obligation really to meet them to the best of our ability. So back in 2011, we really took a big risk because it had never been done before in Ireland. We had to source our insurance from the UK to be insured to do what we were doing. And the only way you would find us is if you were Googling counselling online specifically.
So somebody's going through a difficult time in their life, they go onto your website and either you or one of your colleagues it's a face-to-face Zoom meeting.
Absolutely.
Well,
not necessarily. We found that some people actually aren't able to speak, so they type. If their anxiety is so high, or they just don't like the sound of their voice, so they can type. They can use Zoom without video, so it's just sound or video. So it's really, I suppose we want to, in a way, give the power back to the person who is looking for that support and to be met in however way they want to be met, rather than how society presumes they should be met, you know. So it was that sort of big change in looking at how we access people in order to help them begin their journey to wellness.
Do you think that I suppose having a computer screen in front between you and your client is a barrier in any way, or is it as effective as?
Absolutely.
Right.
I would have. I remember how we started. Was I was working on a suicide prevention page on a social media, and there was a lady who was Googling the word suicide, and she found us. And this is before I ever contemplated doing online counselling, and she was looking for a way to die that night. And she found us, and over time we'd be chatting through text back and over, and she'd say, "Oh, Mary, please, will you be my therapist?" And I said, "Absolutely, no way." It went against everything we were taught. Her psychiatrist had said that she was going to get the electric shock treatment. That was the next course of action for her. And I thought, you know what have we to lose here? So I agreed, but I set really firm boundaries because there was a lot of issues going on with this lady. And she agreed to the criteria that was necessary. So drinking, she was drinking. There was a lot of things going on for her. And she was on a huge amount of medication. with that, Paul, we began to work. So she was living the other side of America, the east coast of America.
Right.
And to get back to your point, I remember one night it was telephone, as in Zoom telephone or Skype telephone at the time. And I was in her bedroom as a little, she was talking about a story as a little girl. And I actually could feel myself in that bedroom with her. So it was only years later, we both found out that we actually both had our eyes closed all through our telephone work together. And it's that energetic connection that was there. So there was this real connection with some people. They work far better online than they do in person. So COVID showed me that. Some of my face-to-face clients went online, and actually their work massively improved for them online. Others, face-to-face is the only way.
Yeah.
But for a lot of people, online is really excellent, and it's so great that
I
they're
suppose
able to
horses for
access it.
courses, really, isn't it? You know, and like I suppose with my addiction, and
Yes.
for those of you who are tuning in or who are learning about Paul Stenson for the first time,
Yes.
I am an addict. I am in recovery, and I'm an alcoholic. But I never really bought into the idea of the rooms, AA,
Yes.
etc. Like I did go to a number of meetings and I sat around, but I just felt I didn't belong there.
Okay.
You know, not that I was, my circumstances weren't as bad as some of the people, but just, it just, I don't know. And then the whole emphasis on God, and I'm kind of grappling with the idea of God myself for the past few years, and I don't know. I don't necessarily believe in a big man up in the sky with a long beard in the clouds, but I do believe there's some shit going on there that we can't define, and there is a God in some shape or form, but not the conventional male bearded man.
Yeah.
But I didn't like that idea of God in the AA rooms, you know, believe in a higher power. They use the word God in the prayer and all that kind of stuff. I just it didn't sit well with me. So one-on-one counselling has helped me a lot. I've had 3 different counsellors over my career, and that's what does it for me.
Yeah.
But I suppose why I started this podcast was because obviously the addiction, the adoption. I'm also adopted, in case people weren't aware of that. I'm also gay, so coming out was an issue for me. And I wanted to kind of piece together the various pieces of the jigsaw to understand the why of Paul Stenson. So, you know, I have a bit of a social media following. People tend to watch me on a day-to-day basis. Sometimes I don't know why, but I'm grateful for them. But am I, you know, looking for attention or acceptance that I never got? Or when I was adopted, was there an unconscious feeling of rejection there that has stayed with me throughout my days on an unconscious level? And is that why I overly compensate on looking for people's likes and follows, and am I trying to get something? So in your experience, Mary, is there any truth to that? Like, could the reason me being an attention whore, is that related to my adoption, do you think, as a psychotherapist?
It could be, you know, it could play a huge part in it. There's something there that you said about the, you know, in the AA and the felt sense. So there's sort of that unconscious knowing or searching that can go on for you. And, you know, I suppose when there's trauma, and that's actually what has happened when you're separated from your birth mother, there's a huge trauma there. And the impact of that trauma is embodied in us, you know. And there's, I suppose in a way, Paul, there's an unconscious grieving, you know, and you don't know in your thinking head, but the body, there's been a complete separation from the mother. They say that we live in, and it's called, you know, the womb of spirit. That's what it's called. A guy called Frank Lake would have termed it that. For the first 9 months after birth, it's called the womb of spirit. So that's where we actually don't see ourselves as separate from the mother. But when that has been cut, it's like, who am I? What am I? And we don't know that in our thinking head,
Even
but
at
it's
the age
embodied.
of a month old, like, is the human brain at that really early stage able to
It can't process it.
but it's
felt.
there.
It's felt. So
It's
what you
felt.
said, you know, when you spoke about the rooms, I didn't fit. So it's a felt. It's not, I can't put it into words. You know, I can maybe put God on it, or, you know, whatever, that it's God I don't get or whatever, but it's a felt sense. I don't fit here. And again, we don't know, but it is that for you, there's been that maybe unconscious searching for something, and I, maybe through social media, you know, it feeds me. So it's that I get that nurturing and that feeding that actually, you know, if we go back to just after birth, it's that nurturing, that feeding that's needed in order for me to feel secure and safe and begin, you know. So I'm not saying that it is, but that could be
It's a plausible
yes,
reason
yes,
for why,
yes,
I suppose, the White Moose
yes,
Cafe was so well known. Paul Stenson is a well-known figure now.
yes, yes,
So that could be at the root of it.
yeah. So it's feeding you.
Mm.
I suppose a lot of my studies we would have done, and I don't know how Frank Lake seems to be coming into it today, but Frank Lake talks about, and again, like yourself, God for me wouldn't be, but I do know there's a more than. I have the evidence in my working world and in my personal world. I call it the more than. God, I'm not so sure about that term, but the more than. But he based his work, and I know this is going religiously a bit, but on the life cycle of Jesus Christ. Okay, and for Jesus, God was the source person. Okay, so for me, my mother is my source person, or whoever my caretaker is. Okay, so for you, you spoke about being in the mother and baby home. So for you, the nuns were your source person or your mother, you know, and we go from source to sustenance. So from our source person, we get sustenance. So that's the food we get, okay? But not only is it the food that feeds us, but it's their words, their energy. So whatever they're feeding us, whether that is love and flow and milk and nurture and all that niceness, or if it's toxic and not so nice stuff, that sustenance is going to affect our status. So it's going to affect how I feel about myself, okay? So how I feel about myself, if I've been fed really good stuff and the sustenance is, you're a great girl, you're a great lad, good on you, you know, that puts my shoulders back and I start to feel good about myself. But if I'm not fed that and I'm fed, oh, you're terrible and look at that, and, you know, so if it's all negative or rejection, that can bring my head down, and it affects how I feel and how I stand. And that in turn affects achievement, how I achieve.
Like, I am an extremely shy person in real life.
Yes.
Not on
Okay.
camera.
Okay.
And like, I've always been shy. I kind of crumble in groups. And, you know, looking back at my school days, I was like the quiet weirdo in school, you know.
Yes.
And I'll never forget my mum saying to me one day, when she saw me, so we lived in a terraced house on Greenmount Road in Terranure, and I would take the bus to school.
Yes.
But she'd look out at me walking down the road to get the bus, and she'd see a kind of exactly what you're saying there.
Okay.
Shoulders down, head down, kind of sad looking
Yeah.
child.
Yes.
And that has been a lot of my childhood, really. So,
Okay.
so what you're saying there now is making complete sense to me.
Okay, great.
So I was adopted at birth, as I said. Now, I was born into a mother and baby home, the St. Patrick's home in the Navan Road. Now, that was run by the sisters. So I was born in 1980,
Okay, yeah.
29th of June, 1980. I was adopted then by mum and dad who have done a stellar job. And I have to say that.
Great.
Because I know mum is probably watching. In fact, she's been counting then the days until episode 1 has gone live.
Yes.
Here we are, mum.
Yeah.
I have to
Everybody
say good
loves
stuff,
your mum.
because I'm going to get a beating. I don't mean it. I'm going to get a clip across the ear when I go home.
Yeah.
If I don't say nice things about it,
Yes.
I'm only joking.
Yeah.
But so mum and dad took me home on, I think it was around the 1st of August. So what's that, about 4 or 5 weeks, let's say? So I don't fully know what shit went on during those 4 or 5 weeks. And it's a burning question
Yeah.
of my life. It's a question that leads me to wonder, is my addiction, because I listen to a lot of podcasts and stuff, and I don't know if you know the works of Gabor Mate, but
I do. Yes.
he is like firm when he says that all addiction is rooted in trauma.
Yes.
And that makes me wonder, was there something that went on during those first 4 or 5 weeks that has led to the way I am now? Even what you're saying now about, like, I'm not saying the nuns came in and
Sure.
just threw me around,
Yes.
but what you're saying now about being fed, I don't know if I was rationed, my food was rationed, or
Yeah.
would you have any knowledge of?
I suppose the only thing that we can go by back then, Paul, is that previous to maybe 1980, there was quite horrific stuff going on, as we now know, in the mother and baby homes. And there was no training given between the time there was real horrific stuff and the 1980s. So, when you go in as a new, maybe nurse, or as a new nun, you sort of follow what's there. Possibly these people, there would be maybe some quite abusive people, some really good people, but you get frozen into, and you nearly take on, well, this is the way it's done here, and
You're institutionalized as a worker there.
Absolutely.
And if you're seen to be loving a baby more than Jemima beside you,
That's
the
right.
other, it's like Jemima or the head sister might say,
Yes.
no, put that child down, or
Yes.
that kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, like even in nurse training, do not get emotionally involved used to be one of the big, and like relationship is key, and how the relationship is, Paul, is key. So, while we don't know and may never know, I go back to the body knows. So the more I come home into my own body, the more my body will begin to tell me. And I know that may sound, out there kind of stuff, but actually that's where it is. Because, if I was to continue on about the achievement, when we drain our batteries, or the baby needs feeding again, we go back to source. As an adult, a lot of us are going, they call that the dynamic life cycle. A lot of us are going around it the wrong way. So we're achieving so that we have status, that, so we go out and we have 10 yachts and we have 10 holidays a year, so that Johnny down the road will think that Paul is the business. Okay.
Is that why I have 2 Jeeps?
And that, have you 2 Jeeps?
Yeah. And you know what? This is all kind of like light bulbs are, as you're speaking,
Okay.
Mary, there's light bulbs going off in my head.
Okay. So what we're doing is we're going around the life cycle the wrong way. We're achieving to gain status, to feel good. That makes us feel good about ourselves, okay? And we're absolutely draining ourselves, because we need to be the source person. If we look at, how am I feeding myself now? Because however I was fed, and that I can't change. So how am I feeding myself now? Is the way I speak to myself toxic? Is what I'm eating toxic? Or is it really sustenance? Is it really good sustenance that actually how I speak to myself, actually, yeah, I'm okay. And that's given me a sense of it's okay to be in my skin. And that's really hard when my familiar, which is family pattern, which is your neural pathways, has been to maybe do the opposite in order to gain acceptance. And the first person that has to, that I have to work on accepting is me. For me to accept me. And I can be really hard on myself. I don't know, does that make sense to you, Paul?
You do, but like
Yeah.
what's going through my mind now is
Yes.
this is a great therapy session. I'm kind of, the cameras don't exist anymore,
Okay.
you know?
Yeah, no, I hear
And
that.
like this, what you're saying now,
Yeah.
it's hitting home in a lot of ways.
Okay.
So whether one person watches this or not, and I think like my initial reason for doing this series was to help others in my
Yes.
situation. So I
Yeah.
can already see, only whatever 20 odd minutes in,
Okay.
that this is very, very, for me, it's very helpful already. So I can
Okay.
imagine it's helpful to others.
Yeah.
Like one thing you did say there about how the nuns would have been so institutionalized and they would have been trained to be not emotionally involved.
Yes.
So now you're taking this infant
Yeah.
and there's no emotional involvement.
There.
It's emotional detachment
That's right.
for like 4 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And, I would have probably cried
Yes.
and been ignored,
Yes.
and so I'm learning a lot.
Yes. Yeah. And we can go from, Paul, stress, which would be understandable that the baby, and again, it's all felt sense. This is all pre-verbal stuff. You have no words. You can't articulate anything that's going on. It's all felt in the body. We can go from stress to transmarginal stress, where we completely nearly leave ourselves, and you find, I'm not sure, do you find that, Paul, in life, that actually I'm here, but I'm not here, that somebody's having a conversation with me and I'm not there. I'm gone.
I know it all too well.
You know it all too well. Yeah. So that's,
Is that transmarginal stress?
well, that's where I leave. I've actually left. It's too
Yeah,
overwhelming.
you're just not there.
Too overwhelming.
You're gone.
You're gone. Yeah. Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah. And it's that coming home. And I know you spoke about addiction, and there's certain stages in development, and one of the first stage after birth is the oral stage. So the oral is all the sucking and the feeding, and they say the oral is addiction, because we are with maybe alcohol or we're looking to ingest something to give us something. So that oral
it's a need.
stage, yes, it's actually a developmental stage. So you go, at the minute I cannot think of all of them, but there's oral, then anal is the hoarder. That's the toilet training stage,
Right.
where you're hoarding onto everything and you're a bit paranoid, So
Okay.
it's like if we get stuck in any of these stages, that actually these are places where it can show up in later life.
Okay. Right. Yeah. Okay. So I didn't get, obviously, the oral.
Yes.
So does that mean I'm spending the rest of my life trying to overcompensate for that by doing it in other ways?
And again, we don't know, but I'm sure it plays a huge part in it. Yeah.
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 Like there was an awful lot of shame for me coming out.
Yeah.
Do people ever, like, I don't know what the spectrum of people who come to you, what their problems might be, and it's none of my business, but is coming out an issue that you've come across in the past?
We come from a society or a culture, go back, don't know how many years ago it was illegal, so like that's massive. I suppose, there's been an awful lot. There's been an awful lot down our lineage. I know, just even going back to Achill, we have Killing Nalanov, which is the grave of the babies, so this is where the churches didn't allow babies that would have died during birth or before they were baptized, or I suppose in some places people who died by suicide, they wouldn't be allowed into consecrated ground. So there was awful shame on things like that. And this Killeen Alanov is where these babies are buried right out on the coast, the waves are crashing in on it, and it's so stunning, and yet it's so painful. And I actually, and this is my thinking, the banshees, the banshee is like a fairy woman, and she cries, and she real loud keen. And my thinking is down these sandy banks is actually these mothers were keening and screaming for their babies that were gone. But nobody understood that to lose a baby would cause grief, get over it. And the likes of that, give up your baby, get over it, or, you're adopted, get over it. So culturally, we've grown up really, really not being open to human suffering and the trauma that causes, Yeah.
In just bringing it back to my coming out,
Yes.
and again, I went to a conservative school, rugby playing school, alpha male. My adoptive family would be business people and, really respected and all of that kind of stuff. And I guess, so coming out wasn't necessarily easy for me at all. In fact, there was a huge amount of shame, and there was an awful lot of, I was living a lie for a lot of my school years and my college years. I would actually get with women. Now, it wouldn't be very enjoyable, but it happened.
Yes.
What am I trying to say? It was. I could never actually come out to my mum and dad ever.
Yeah.
That was an issue for me as well. I don't know if that's in any way related to, like, I had an let's call a spade a spade. I had an identity problem. That's what it was.
Yeah. Who am I?
Who the fuck am I?
Yeah.
And then adding the gayness into the mix was just like putting fuel on the fire. Now, I'm now 43, living in Achill, very, very comfortable in who I am. But do you think that we still have an issue in this country? That's why I kind of said, do many people come to you or online or in person with, coming out issues? Do you think that, let's say in the west of Ireland where we are now, that there's an awful lot of closeted people?
Yes. It's changing, Paul, and it's a bit like mental health. Thankfully, that's our how we see it is changing too, because ignorance causes so much harm, and there's been so much ignorance, and for you, and I'm only assuming, growing up as a young lad and into a young man, you would have definitely heard homophobic talk.
Oh yeah.
And that, if you go back, and again, it's not knowing, but and I suppose that's what I'd be curious about is actually, what was it like for you? That little boy that sort of the head is down, and he's struggling really hard to get this head up, and then there's I'm gay as well, and it's like, oh Jesus, more shit.
Is it any wonder I drank? Do you know what I mean? Jesus.
Yeah. So, when
Give
you
us the
just
bottle
take
now.
a picture of Paul, and you see this little boy, even going back, and thankfully it was at 5 weeks that you began to get the nurture and the feeding from your adoptive parents, from your parents, that healing is there, and healing is there at any point in our lives. Thankfully, they used to say you can't teach an old dog new tricks, but we can. Science is showing us that we can. And you have that loving support, and that all impacts on us. But you grew up in a time where it was coming out was starting to become okay, but we still had all the shit of the past that was coming with it. So you had to contend with that. So, as you said, who am I?
Who am I? 24601. Sorry, that's just my musical theatre background coming into play. I am gay. So what I thought was, so you know what I'm probably doing here? Because I know the unconscious comes into play
Yes.
a lot. You know what this podcast series could be? This could be my breakthrough moment. Like I've considered, because I still don't know what the fuck is going on in this head of mine, and I've considered alternate therapies such as plant-based medicine, ayahuasca. I don't know. Have you DMT? Like, have you?
I have an awareness of it. I would know people. I would be very mindful of where, if you are to do that, where you do that, who you do that with. So
You have a number, do you?
After the show.
Moving swiftly on. Sorry, Mary.
Yeah, but so just be it's. There's really great work. Gabor it talks about it all the time. So in our training as psychotherapists, we were really blessed. So part of our training was, again, Frank Lake, but I can't think of the other guy, holotropic breath work.
Oh, yeah.
So we would have been trained in holotropic. So back in I can't tell you, the 60s or 70s, LSD and all of that used to be used in the psychiatric hospitals, but that became illegal.
Look, like, would that have been used? So I remember, where the White Moose was based,
Yes.
it was like literally 3 minutes walk from St. Brendan's Hospital in Grange Gorman. No,
Yes.
a lot of shit went on there.
There we go, yes.
So there would have been LSD work there.
Yes.
What's that professor's name?
Ivor Brown.
Ivor.
There, so Ivor would have trained me.
And he was big into his...
Yeah. So he himself and Jim O'Donoghue.
Right.
So Jim O'Donoghue was also my teacher, and a tough teacher. But I learned a great amount of stuff from him. But that became illegal, so they had to find another way. So they were able to access it through the breath. So it is that, I suppose Wim Hof is doing a bit of it, in a different kind of way.
Yeah.
But we were, as trainees, thrown into this deep abdominal breathing, and it was taking us into all sorts of places of healing. And that's where I suppose I know about the more than. I know about the interconnect, what we are connected. We are all connected. And it's all of that piece. And I suppose I also, Paul, have a deep passion for generational legacies. And, a bit like with you being adopted, there's that thinking that actually I don't have any connection to my family of origin, but the body does. And that's the amazing thing.
That word connection, I don't know how many times we've said it today.
Okay.
But that's the one word
Okay.
we take out of this, I think.
So it touches you.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it touches you, yeah.
Because, and that's what I guess maybe that's what I've always been looking for.
There we go. Yeah. Yeah.
Because that's what I didn't have.
That's right. Yeah.
Like, would you be a proponent of me? Like, remember, I'm an addict.
Yes.
And remember, if you give me a bottle of Heineken or a vodka, you'll find me up the Sugarloaf doing the Macarena naked tomorrow.
Yes.
Or maybe in a couple of hours. So, can you visualize that, by the way? Sorry if I'm putting mental images in people's heads. But I jest, and like, you'd probably actually find me horizontal on the couch tomorrow for days.
Yes.
I wasn't an alcoholic that kind of needed to down a bottle of vodka first thing in the morning. I actually hated that. But when I started, I couldn't stop. And like, if I went out, I would black out to the point that, like, I don't know how I'd get home. I've actually ended up in pretty precarious houses with pretty precarious stuff happening without my consent and without my knowledge. Then the days after that, I would just stay in bed. I wouldn't have the strength to leave my house, never mind my room. My room, never mind my house. I wouldn't answer the phone. I just wouldn't be able to talk to anybody. So that's how my addiction was a roller coaster of ups and downs. It was never kind of a linear, constantly being out of my mind drunk.
Yeah.
It was, what's the word? Intermittent
Yes. Yeah.
blackouts.
Or sort of bingey.
100%. That's what you'd say.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people in Ireland are prone to binging at the moment. Although I do see a serious movement back to 0 beers.
Okay.
Like I do see it kind of being cool now to not drink and not take drugs.
Yeah.
This dry January is coming out a bit wider than just January. And like if I want to consider ayahuasca, if I want to go down to a ceremony in the Colombian rainforest or wherever it is, the Amazon, wherever it is, and just find myself, is there I can't get addicted to it, can I?
That I don't know about ayahuasca. I Gabor Mate, I would be listening to him because he talks a lot about it. My thinking is, that actually because he talks about it, he talks about the addiction and the hungry ghost. Again, I can't answer that.
So, and that's fair enough, Mary, and sorry maybe for putting you on the spot,
okay.
But what I'm trying to say to you is I feel like it's something I need to do.
Yeah.
Because I've heard so many great stories, like I believe it's like, I don't know, something like, is it 10 years of therapy in a day or something like this?
So they say.
And so it's a bucket list thing I need to do just to see if, and as this podcast series was.
Yeah.
But what's pulling me back is, Paul, you can't even have a pint of Guinness without, you can't even control a pint of Guinness. How the fuck can you control this substance?
Yeah.
So
there is a searching, within you.
Yeah.
And probably that is as a result, this constant searching to fill something. And addiction really is I'm constantly outside of myself, whether that's with food, with internet, with alcohol. I'm constantly outside of myself looking to fill something. But it has to come from within. That's actually where I have to come home to me, because even if we go back to the source person who was our mother, the nun, your adopted parents, the source person now, Paul, is you. You are your source person. And it is, can I come home? Can I feed myself? So meditation, I don't know whether you've ever practiced that.
I love it.
There. So it's like, sometimes it can be like drinking nectar, when we're really connected into our practice. And that is the nurturing. And when I slow down enough, because again, and I can be a butterfly myself, I have a busy brain, but when I slow down enough, the body begins to talk to us. And I always say it'll start to show you all your owies. And all it needs is for you to put these little owies up on your knee, because you have so many little owies that need to be tended to. And Paul needs to tend to them. I
must say, you have a fabulously gentle and consoling voice.
Thank you, Paul.
I can imagine is it any wonder you're such a great
no.
counselor?
I'm told, come live with me. It's
Yeah, all right, okay. But just in terms of the mindfulness thing, when I was living in Dublin, I would often go to a meditation session in the Stanhope Centre.
Great.
And which was only down the road from me. And when I wasn't using drugs or drinking, I would go through kind of like periods of sobriety and a new life, and now I'm starting anew, and that was part of it. But I really enjoyed sitting around in the room, just conscious of your breath, bringing it right down, and you'd leave the session kind of high. It was weird.
And connected.
Yes. Now in Achill, and again, I'm not trying to sell Saunas in any way, but I guess one of the reasons I started that was because of, obviously, cold water immersion is, and you mentioned Wim Hof already, But everyone got into sea swimming during COVID.
Yeah.
And we all saw the benefits of freezing your bollocks off and how you feel after that.
It's huge.
Getting into your fight or flight, fighting it, persisting, breathing through it. And then I know Graham here, the lunatic here to my right, who's on the floor on Christmas Day, he sat himself into an ice box and it looked painful. But I'd say, did you feel good after that?
Felt amazing.
Yes.
Yeah. So cold water therapy, can't beat it. But then what you might want to add is the addition of the other extreme, heat. And I think going from hot to cold
Okay, yes.
with the saunas.
Yes, and I've been in the sauna, yeah.
It
was super because I'm a sea swimmer. I 7:45 every morning. I'm on the girt, and every morning I'm saying, "Oh my God, what am I doing?" And I come out and it's like, whoa.
Yeah.
It's just the business.
You
And
feel just refreshed.
So I thought the sauna was going to be maybe more traumatic, as in ice cold, but actually it was fantastic, to experience the sauna, go into the sea, come out into the sauna. It was
repeat.
Amazing. Yeah, really.
And what I find the sauna does is like it's a communal experience because you could be sitting in there with 5 other strangers and you strike up a conversation and you meet friends and stuff. But I sit in there on my own and I just breathe, and it's nothing but pure mindfulness for me.
Yeah,
brings it all back.
Yeah,
and that's why I love it. And to be honest with you, I'm going to sound very selfish here.
Yeah,
but the reason I started the sauna in Achill was for me.
Yeah,
and for my mental health.
Yeah.
But now it's extremely popular.
Yeah.
And I'm delighted other people are using it. And
it's great to find something, that actually brings you. And I think, Paul, Achill, probably for you, it's just spectacular. Like it's, so for you to have the wildness, because it's wild in a natural way, not in a party way,
drug-fueled way.
Yes, it has the Atlantic Ocean, and it has the cliffs, and it has the wildness. And winter for me is the best time in Achill, because it's just bleak, wild, and free. And
that word freedom. That word freedom is what resonates with me. Well, wild as well, obviously.
And you can walk away and keep walking, and and that's it. You don't have to answer to anybody. You're with you, and that's the peace.
And more importantly, with my dogs.
And with your dogs,
because I prefer dogs to humans.
Yes.
I don't know if you feel the same way.
Yes.
But I can easily just like people say to me, you don't really have much of a life in Achill, and I'm like, I have a better life than...
But that's so understandable, Paul, because, as we all know, a dog will love us unconditionally. There's no conditions attached. And probably, again, from a felt sense with you, there had to be conditions to somebody accepting me.
Isn't that mad? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, look, Mary, I'm going to go out now and I'm going to meet a number of guests for the rest of this season. And they're guests that have come into my life at various different stages. And I'm going to talk to them in a bit more detail, the points that I touched on with you. And I'm going to see if the theories that we've kind of come up with during this session hold water, or if they're a load of bollocks.
There we go.
But I think the former is the case.
We shall wait and see.
Mary McHugh of counsellingonline.ie, an absolute pleasure to have you in studio today.
Thank you, Paul, for having me.
And thank you to everybody who tuned in at home, whether that be in visual or audio format. Thanks, Mary.
Thank you.
Folks, thank you so much for watching today's podcast. If you were affected in any way by something mentioned in the podcast, please visit my Instagram now, where there's a Linktree link and various resources available. Thank you so much, folks.